This cyber risk assessment presentation identifies current measures for authentication, authorization, and access control for the United Kingdom. Weaknesses in the organization's security will be clearly explained. How these weaknesses are exploited will also be talked about. The conclusion will talk about how to mitigate these risks. There are current measures for authentication set up at the organization. The organization currently uses multi-factor authentication for access to network resources. Multi-factor authentication includes something you are, something you know, and something you have. For multi-factor authentication, the organization uses CACs, or Common Access Cards. Common Access Cards are multi-factor authentication because they require something you know and are to access network resources. There are current authorization measures set up at the organization. Authorization is the process of granting or denying access to network resources. The user is first authenticated with the username and password, then the user is authorized to use the resources based on their identity. Examples of authorization at the organization are Computer Access Forms, or SARS, and Access Control List. There are different measures in place at the organization for access control. The two types of access control are physical and technical. Examples of physical access control are gates and fences. Technical access controls is users' credentials, firewalls, protocols, and encryption. The three main varieties of access controls are discretionary, mandatory, and role-based. The organization uses discretionary access control. The organization has different weaknesses. An attack vector is how the malicious user accesses the network resources. The different categories of attack vectors are hardware, software, operating system, network, and finally human. Hardware attack vectors are eavesdropping and hardware modification. Eavesdropping is also called a sniffing attack. An eavesdropping attack occurs when a malicious user tries to steal data transmitted over a network. Hardware modification is another area of concern for the organization. Jailbreaking the device could change the way in which the hardware functions. Hardware modification could also lead to a hacker receiving a backdoor to the network. Software attack vectors are improper input validation, malware, and phishing. Improper input validation is an attack on the software the organization uses. This attack happens when the code for software is not tested correctly. The attacker sends abnormal input to the application. The purpose of malware is to create havoc on the network. Examples of malware that can affect the organization are Trojans, ransomware, viruses, and spyware. Phishing attack occurs when an end user clicks on a malicious link or file. This malicious link or file steals the user's credentials after they are inputted. Many times, phishing attacks try to impersonate the government with an urgent matter. Operating system attack vectors are privilege escalation, buffer overflow, and password attacks. During a privilege escalation attack, a malicious user gains access to the OS and escalates his permissions to a more powerful account. Password attacks occur on the operating system when a number of passwords are entered to log into an account. Examples are brute force and dictionary attacks. Denial of service, man in the middle, and birthday attacks are all examples of network attacks. A DOS or denial of service attack on the network has the potential to affect all the devices on the network. Man in the middle attacks occur when an attacker intercepts communication between two parties and either sniffs traffic in the middle or alters traffic. Note 2019. These attacks can be initiated by the end user clicking on a phishing link. A malicious user can also access the attack through weak encryption. A birthday attack is a cryptography attack. The final attack vector that affects the United Kingdom are human factors. Examples of human factors are lack of training, misconfiguration, patches, or upgrades not being applied, and malicious insiders. Humans have the ability to create attack vectors. Misconfiguration could be caused by a lack of training. Lack of training can lead to many doors for attack vectors being left open. Most human attack vectors can be mitigated with a proper training. Malicious insiders are people who work or have worked at the organization and revealed the organization's information or data without the correct permission or authorization. Weak policy enforcement can lead to data being lost. For example, a network policy that is not followed could lead to an attacker to get access to network resources. Or when a user does not follow the password policy, it could lead to the user's password being easily cracked by a hacker. The hacker can then gain unauthorized access to network resources. The following slide shows a vulnerability assessment matrix. The vulnerabilities listed have the potential to affect the United Kingdom. The final topic that will be discussed will be recommendations. There are different ways to mitigate and identify the risk. There is no way to completely mitigate all the risk. However, different steps can be taken to mitigate some of them. The organization has decided to accept some of the risks that come with employees. Patches should be applied regularly to the network assets to mitigate some of the risks. Sandbox testing should be utilized to ensure the new patches upgrades will not break the network. Continuous monitoring should be implemented by the organization. Continuous monitoring can help identify a privileged escalation attack and many others. Employee training should be conducted regularly, will help protect the organization against cyber attacks. Employees should be trained to not click any links on email or social networking sites. To protect and mitigate against improper input validation, all data should be validated. To get more information about the attacks, digital fingerprints can be used. Antivirus software can be used to help mitigate some of the risks associated with malware. Antivirus software should be used to protect against malware and ransomware. To help protect against data leakage, data loss prevention software should be used. Strong security policies can lead to many vulnerabilities being closed. The organization should use the principle of least privilege. Least privilege means that users are only granted access to the resources they need to do their job. Identity and access management systems should be used by the organization to ensure users are granted the appropriate access to resources. DOS or denial of service mitigations can be done by changing the timeout time for stale connections and monitoring network traffic logs. The following slide lists the reference used for this presentation.